6,826 Ukrainians. This is how many civilians were killed during Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. According to the UN, more than 10,000 more people were wounded. Experts say the actual number of casualties is much higher. After all, the exact number of Mariupol residents who were killed is still unknown.
The city had been under siege for more than a month and was under fire from tanks and heavy artillery. There was street fighting. According to various estimates, between 20 and 90,000 people may have been killed. From the article of the Important Stories publication.
According to the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office, 450 children were killed in Ukraine as a result of Russian military actions. Children from the Donetsk region suffered the most, and in the temporarily occupied territories, the aggressor country is carrying out a large-scale deportation of children. The Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine reports more than 13,000 cases of Ukrainian children deported to the Russian Federation.
Putin's goal, the goal of Russians, is to make the number of Ukrainians as small as possible. They would like to completely wipe us out. The second goal, and it is important for them, is to increase the number of citizens of the Federation of Slavic appearance, because when children are deported, they are sent to orphanages. They apply to the migration service of the Russian Federation through their guardians, and these children are issued passports. Here we have recorded cases of the 3.5 years old. At this age, these guardians submit documents. The question is, at this age, can the child realize something?
More than 50% of Ukraine's energy infrastructure facilities have been damaged by Russian attacks, after which Ukrainians are left without electricity, heat and water. However, most often the Russians fired at residential buildings, depriving Ukrainians of their homes. Since the beginning of the war, the Russian military destroyed or damaged 144,000 residential buildings, according to the estimates of the Kiev School of Economics. Experts are sure that most of these strikes are carried out by the Russian army on purpose, to intimidate and break the Ukrainians.
This is terror, intimidation. Their goal is to psychologically break Ukrainian civil society. They think that the broken society will press on the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, and say, to hell with it, let the Russians rule over us. Pavel Lusin, Russian military expert, in an interview with the Important Stories publication.
Since the beginning of hostilities, the Prosecutor General's Office of Ukraine has recorded more than 55,000 war crimes committed by the Russian military. Most of them are under the article on violation the laws and customs of war, which includes torture, rape and murder of civilians.
Every day the world sees hundreds of war crimes committed by the Russian armed forces on live streaming, a total disregard for international law and human rights. There is not a single article of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights that Russia has not violated. Andriy Kostin, Prosecutor General of Ukraine, on the website of the Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine.
However, the military invasion also resulted in huge losses for Russia itself. According to the General Staff of Ukraine, in the 10th month of the war, Russia has irretrievably lost more than 100,000 soldiers. Among these losses are also mobilized Russians, who are often sent to the front without training, experts say.
Mobilized people who participated in combat operations were at best retrained or trained from scratch within a few days. It is a crime to send people to the front like that. When you are dragged from civilian life into the army, you must first undergo personal training, then as part of a crew, squad, platoon, and then go through combat integration. From the report of the independent investigative organization Conflict Intelligence Team.
According to calculations by Important Stories, the Russian army lost up to 80% of all its combat-ready tanks and about 33% of its armored vehicles. A large part of them fell into the hands of the Ukrainian army. 36% of the tanks and armored vehicles lost by Russia were captured by the armed forces of Ukraine or abandoned by the Russian army during the retreat, according to the data of the Oryx project. Even if the capacity of defense enterprises of the military industry is increased in Russia, the quality of the produced equipment will not improve, experts say.
We will be able to produce medium technologically advanced types of weapons in large commercial quantities. But this will not be the most advanced weapons systems, but combat systems of 20 years ago, military expert in a comment for the Important Stories publication.
The war in Ukraine hit the Russian budget. The Ukrainian edition of Forbes has calculated that in 9 months Russia spent $82 billion on equipment, ammunition, military supplies and compensation for the wounded and the families of the killed, a quarter of its annual budget.
A quarter of all expenditures are classified, a record since 2015. At the same time, military spending is protected from falling revenues, which means that in case of a budget shock, a sharp drop in revenues, other expenditures such as those on economic development and other social programs will be cut. Alexandra Prokopenko, expert on Russian economic policy, in an interview with the Important Stories publication.
According to the Russian Federal State Statistics Service, since the beginning of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, more than 8.5 million people have fled Russia. After the so-called partial mobilization, another 700,000 Russians left the country in just 2 weeks. Reported by Roman Smoler, Victoria Sinko, UATV News.